Leonardo DiCaprio stood calmly in the first-class line, dressed in simple attire, a striking contrast to the luxury around him. One man watched him with a mix of contempt and curiosity, not hiding his arrogance. What happened next would leave everyone on that airplane speechless and alter at least one life forever. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you like stories like this one, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we'll share another special narrative. Los Angeles International Airport was as busy as ever, people crisscrossing in a flurry of conversations and rolling luggage. Amid all that bustle was Leonardo DiCaprio waiting in the first-class line. He wore a plaid shirt, worn jeans, and scuffed boots, carrying a backpack that looked like it had seen every corner of the world. There was nothing flashy about him, which made him blend into the background, yet for those who noticed, there was something undeniably different about his demeanor. It wasn't just his ordinary clothes, it was the calm aura he radiated, as though the surrounding chaos couldn't reach him. Everyone else seemed rushed and on edge, but Leonardo appeared to be soaking in every detail, unaffected by the urgency around him. Standing right behind him in line was Victor Harding, who was Leonardo's polar opposite. Victor wore an expensive tailored suit, polished shoes, and a powerful cologne. Every move he made seemed calculated, as though he wanted to project the image of someone distinctly important. He glanced around the line, eyes pausing on Leonardo, and couldn't resist a cutting remark. "First class, huh?" Victor said with a wry smile. "You never know who's going to show up here these days." Leonardo turned slightly, meeting Victor's gaze with composure. "Yeah," he answered softly. "The world is full of surprises." Victor's smug expression hinted that he expected a stronger reaction. When Leonardo's calm response didn't satisfy him, he pushed further. "No offense," he continued, "but you don't exactly look like the type who flies this way." Boarding began, and the first-class passengers started moving. Leonardo and Victor stepped forward without exchanging more words. Victor advanced with firm strides, exuding confidence, while Leonardo walked at the same unhurried, tranquil pace. Soon, they were on the plane, and it didn't take long for an unexpected twist to arise. Victor checked his ticket and saw that Leonardo was settling into the seat right next to his. "You have got to be kidding," Victor muttered, shaking his head. He took his seat, letting out a low laugh as though the situation was a cosmic joke. Of all the places it had to be here, Leonardo, unperturbed, glanced at him and gave a faint smile. "Guess we're traveling together," he said simply. Victor crossed his arms, discomfort rippling through him. It wasn't just about sitting next to someone he'd dismissed minutes earlier. It was how calm Leonardo remained, which unsettled Victor in a way he couldn't fully understand. Once the passengers in economy class had filed in, Victor decided to strike up conversation, though not in a friendly manner. "So, what do you do for a living?" he asked, tone dripping with condescension, as though he already knew the answer. Leonardo, adjusting his backpack under the seat in front of him, replied, "I'm in film." Victor raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Oh, commercials and small projects?" Leonardo shrugged slightly. "Something like that?" Victor chuckled. "I always find it interesting how people try to find their place. Let's be honest, first class just isn't meant for some folks." Leonardo looked at him, unruffled, as though deciding whether to respond. "I think everyone ends up in exactly the place they need to be," he finally said. Victor gave a short laugh. "That sounds nice. Philosophical even, but the real world isn't that simple." Leonardo offered no immediate response, turning his gaze to the window instead. Undeterred, Victor leaned closer. "You might be sitting here," he said, voice low, "but there are some places money can't buy your way into. Some spaces just don't fit certain people." Leonardo didn't reply with words this time. He simply looked at Victor with a quiet, steady confidence that said volumes. Victor, realizing he wasn't getting the response he'd wanted, leaned back in his seat with a satisfied smirk, convinced he'd proven a point. Soon the plane was in the air, and the in-flight service commenced. A flight attendant made her way down the first-class aisle with refreshments. Victor made sure he was noticed. "A glass of champagne, please," he said with an air of importance. "Something that suits flying first class." The flight attendant, used to such requests, smiled professionally. When she turned to Leonardo, he made a simple request. "Water's fine," he said quietly. Victor seized the moment. "Water?" he exclaimed, barely containing his laughter. "Don't tell me you're gonna waste a first-class seat with just water." Leonardo accepted the water bottle from the flight attendant and stayed calm. "I'm fine with this. Sometimes simplicity is all you need." Victor's expression soured. "I guess that works for people who settle. Not everyone is born to enjoy the best life offers." Leonardo took a small sip, not reacting to the jab. Around them, other passengers picked up on Victor's antagonistic tone, but since Leonardo seemed unbothered, no one intervened. "Maybe the best is different for each person," Leonardo replied, serene as ever. Victor snorted. "That's what people say when they don't have access to anything better. Some things are just out of reach, no matter what." The flight attendant, observing the tension, glanced over as if prepared to step in, but Leonardo's calm demeanor hinted that he had things under control. He merely offered a half smile and turned to look outside once more, effectively shutting down the conversation. Victor, though, was unsettled. Leonardo was not the easy target he'd hoped for. Other passengers exchanged uncomfortable glances, feeling that Victor's arrogance was overshadowing everyone's personal space. Believing he still had the upper hand, Victor turned to Leonardo again. "You know," he began, swirling his champagne, "life's like a first-class ticket. You work hard, you earn your spot, and then you enjoy it. But some people, they just get here by chance." Leonardo paused, placing his bottle of water on the tray table. "Luck, hard work, or something else? We all land in the same place when the flight's over, right?" he said, his voice measured but unwavering. The people seated nearby perked up at this subtle face-off, the tension palpable. Victor forced a grin, as if unaffected. "I wouldn't say that. Some of us stand on a higher level. Not everyone appreciates what first class is all about." Leonardo leaned forward slightly, arms crossed. "I think the real value of being here," he nodded at the seat around them, "isn't about possessions. It's how we treat the people around us." His words hung in the air, resonating with several passengers who gave small nods of approval. Victor, in contrast, appeared bothered, masking discomfort with a dismissive laugh. "That's a nice sentiment," he drawled. "Maybe you should go into motivational speaking." Leonardo smiled briefly and then turned away, ending the exchange. Around them, folks whispered, sharing disapproving looks aimed at Victor. A few recognized Leonardo, but said nothing, respecting his apparent wish to remain inconspicuous. Victor, however, was too wrapped up in himself to fully grasp what was happening, not realizing his attempts to belittle Leonardo were backfiring in the eyes of other passengers. Little did Victor know, the real turning point was still ahead. A little later, the flight attendant returned with another round of drinks. Victor, determined to best Leonardo, leaned forward again. "You know what's funny?" he said in a mocking tone. "People who have nothing always preach about humility. Ever notice that?" Leonardo met Victor's gaze. "I've noticed that people who brag the most about what they own often feel something missing inside." Victor looked taken aback, searching for a retort, but momentarily speechless. He recovered enough to say, "Look, I'm not trying to be rude, but this world is competitive. If you don't show what you have, people will ignore you." Leonardo settled back in his seat. "Maybe, but real success doesn't need to be advertised. It speaks on its own." Several passengers nodded, some looking openly annoyed with Victor. An older gentleman nearby leaned forward, displeasure evident on his face. Victor sensed the shift in the cabin's atmosphere, but pressed on anyway, forcing a smile. "Cheap philosophy. It sounds nice, but the real world isn't quite like that." Leonardo held his calm. "The real world is made up of us, and in the end, how we treat others reveals more about who we truly are." Victor shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable at being stared at by onlookers. In his mind, he still believed he was winning, not aware that the other passengers had grown weary of his arrogance. The silence that followed felt charged, and Victor broke it by confronting Leonardo more directly. "You know," Victor said, arms crossed tightly, "some of us bust our backs to get where we are, and it's frustrating when others waltz in, acting like they belong." Leonardo studied him for a second. "I get it. The world can be tough, but in my experience, the urge to prove yourself to others usually hides a deeper insecurity." Victor's forehead creased. "Insecurity?" He gave a short laugh. "You couldn't be more wrong about me." Leonardo shook his head slightly. "I've met many people who thought flaunting success was the only way to show they mattered. Deep down, they were trying to fill a void." For a split second, Victor's eyes flickered with something akin to shame, and his hand toyed with the wedding ring on his finger. He quickly caught himself, adopting a defensive posture. That's not me. Everything I have, I worked hard for. I don't need anyone telling me how to live my life. Leonardo regarded Victor patiently. I'm not questioning your hard work. I just think sometimes we're so fixated on appearances, we forget to look inside ourselves. Without all this, he gestured broadly, who are we? Victor pressed his lips together, bristling at the question. We're what we build. Without that, we're nothing. Leonardo's gaze intensified. I see it differently. I believe we're defined by what we do for others, not just by what we gather for ourselves. He tapped his chest. That's what truly matters. For a moment, Victor sat there, fists clenched, color rising in his cheeks. The tension was visible in every muscle. Finally, he stood up so abruptly that he knocked over his empty champagne glass. You think you're better than me? He practically yelled, drawing attention from everyone in first class. Sitting there with your clever lines, acting like you know everything. You don't have a clue how the real world works. The sudden outburst made the entire cabin hush. The flight attendant rushed over to calm things down. Leonardo remained seated, regarding Victor with steady eyes. He waited for the tirade to subside before replying. I don't think I'm better, he said quietly. I just believe it's worth considering what really matters. And Victor, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Victor's breathing was ragged, but something in Leonardo's voice made him slowly sink back into his seat. He wouldn't look up, clearly embarrassed by his own outburst. The flight continued under an awkward hush. Victor wouldn't meet Leonardo's eye, while Leonardo himself looked as tranquil as ever, as though he'd already moved on. Not long after, a flight attendant approached Leonardo with a polite smile. Mr. DiCaprio, the captain asked me to let you know your connection in Tokyo is confirmed, and he sends his regards. The mention of the name DiCaprio echoed through first class, causing several people to glance over in surprise. A hum of recognition spread among the cabin. That was the moment Victor froze. DiCaprio, he murmured, eyes wide with shock. Leonardo DiCaprio? Leonardo offered a slight nod to the flight attendant, thanking her without making a fuss. Turning to Victor, he noticed the man's wide-eyed expression. Something wrong, Victor? He asked, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. Victor struggled to form words. His mind raced with all the jabs he had made, now aware of whom he'd been mocking. Passengers who had been quietly observing the entire time looked on with raised eyebrows. Some glared at Victor disapprovingly, while others seemed amused by his sudden predicament. Victor dropped back into his seat, bewildered. In a low voice, he mumbled, I didn't know. You didn't say who you were. Leonardo's voice remained even. Didn't think it mattered. I don't go around announcing my name. Victor remained speechless for a beat before stammering. I wasn't trying to offend you personally. I just didn't know who I was talking to. Leonardo sighed. That doesn't change the things you said. Respect isn't about who someone is. It's about how you treat people, no matter what you think you know about them. Victor nodded slowly, feeling every eye in first class on him. His face was flushed with humiliation, and for once he had no retort. Leonardo leaned back, effectively signaling that the conversation was done. Victor, meanwhile, stared at his own hands, replaying every insult he'd uttered. For the remainder of the flight, Victor couldn't shake a profound discomfort. The arrogance he had displayed earlier had vanished, replaced by something resembling shame. He recalled every moment of their exchange, contrasting it with Leonardo's calm, measured responses. Eventually, Victor turned to Leonardo, gaze lowered. I need to apologize, he muttered. Not because of who you are, but because I was arrogant. I acted like a jerk. Leonardo studied him thoughtfully. I appreciate that. But more than the apology, I hope you learned something from all this. Victor nodded, swallowing. Yeah, maybe I did. Leonardo offered a faint smile. Sometimes what we look for most is what we find least in ourselves. I hope you figure out what's really important. They disembarked, and Victor lingered momentarily in the terminal, watching Leonardo walk away. A small crowd of fans discreetly approached the actor, asking for autographs and pictures. Leonardo greeted them kindly, showing neither haste nor arrogance, an easy warmth that sprang from a genuine place. Observing this, Victor felt a sting of regret and a flicker of hope. Perhaps their meeting wasn't random. Perhaps it was a wake-up call. In the end, every one of us carries choices that define who we become. Do we live to impress others, or do we strive to be better human beings? Leonardo's words made one thing clear. Real success has little to do with how much we show off, and everything to do with our impact on the people and world around us. So, the next time you catch yourself judging or pushing someone down, remember, respect and humility never go out of style. And if you want to see change in the world, it might need to start with you first. If this story warmed your heart, we've got plenty more. Click on the screen to check out other tales of hope, kindness, and resilience.